Let me put this in simple terms. Simplicity is its own reward. Sure, we can get that. But of course, it all depends on what we mean by simplicity, where we're prepared to draw the line. Hello, Anthony Fennell here. This is Future Tense. Go too far and things become simplistic to the point of unintelligible. Go even further and simplicity often turns into complexity. Take the tech industry, for example, and the experience of Canadian entrepreneur DeMers.
My background is I used to work in a bunch of big financial institutions, enterprise organizations, and in IT, always getting access to the latest and greatest technologies and using that to build better capabilities for our business. And as time elapsed, as those technologies advanced and enabled us to build more and faster, just saw firsthand that the complexity was actually growing, not shrinking. So it was actually taking longer to do things. It was getting harder to do things. You needed to be smarter to do things. I noticed that there's this trend, which is new technologies are cool and they do make things possible that was difficult before, but somehow just in aggregate, it adds, it doesn't take away. And that's on the professional side. If I look at my personal life, even, since childhood, of course, there's been lots of advancements in technology. The gadgets that my kids have is light years ahead of what I could have even ever imagined. But I'm pretty confident their life is no simpler than mine was. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So there's this pattern that I was seeing over and over again, which is new technology adds complexity. And that is not the promise of technology. That's not why we get excited about it. It's supposed to make life easier. It's supposed to take away.
And unless we get a firmer grip on those two notions of simplicity and complexity, well, our already messy world is going to get a lot more confusing and a lot more difficult to navigate. And that's the simple way of putting it. Now, back to DeMers and what he terms the simplicity cliff.
It's much easier just to add on top of what's already there versus to take away. And so it's easier for vendors to offer additive solutions, to offer workarounds, band-aids, to add, not take away. That's, I think, one of the main things. And there hasn't been, let's say, a call to action for the innovators of the world to rethink how they prioritize innovation. And I think that's starting to change. I don't know if you feel the same, but I feel like there's a growing awareness of this, the fact that complexity is growing and we're reaching this complexity cliff and it's just not sustainable. So I think there's two sides to it. It's a little bit harder for technology builders and providers and innovators to create tech that simplifies. But there needs to be the demand for that. And I personally see that demand growing quite quickly, actually.
Do we sometimes mistake incremental changes for, what many of us would think of as a true innovation?
Definitely. There's whoever's ultimately bringing to market some new technology innovation, they're trying to create as much hype around that as possible. So, we live in a world of PowerPoints and promises and hype cycles, and every new technology promises to change the world, but it doesn't, at least not in the material way, at least not in a way that simplifies. There's lots of new technologies that allow you to do things that you couldn't do before, but the ones that are actually exciting, the ones that are actually transformational, are the ones that make it such that you no longer need to do what you did before. So if you look at, technology will add and subtract, it better be a net subtraction, otherwise does it even make sense? If you've ever read any of Joseph Tainter's work, he talks about this phenomena of, the growth of capabilities and the addition of complexity adds exponential benefits, but then it starts to get smaller and diminishing returns. And next thing you know, you're over this peak of complexity, and the other side of that peak is collapse, meaning it's either such that we're heading towards a massive societal collapse, or we're on the early beginnings of the simplification revolution.
DeMers, the CEO of the data management company Sinchi.